Major funding for this Read 180 workshop is provided by the National Science Foundation, America's investment in the future.
Intel Corporation is a proud supporter of PBS. The Intel Innovation in Education Initiative provides teachers with the resources to inspire their students and encourage them to unlock their potential.
At Jif Peanut Butter, we know just how choosy you are when it comes to your family, including the shows you value most. Public television encourages kids' curiosity and love of learning, and Jif is proud to support Cyberchase on behalf of all choosy moms and dads.
And by a ready-to-learn television cooperative agreement from the U.S. Department of Education through the Public Broadcasting Service.
And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This program was also made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Workshop 2, Killer Plagues. Plague. It might be the scariest word in any language. It refers to a deadly infectious disease that spreads from one person to another until it becomes a massive epidemic, affecting large numbers of people. In the 1900s, a disease called smallpox wiped out 300 million people around the world. That's more people than live in the entire United States today. Your first reading is about how this deadly killer could come back to life. You'll also read about Ebola, a horrible and deadly virus that still has no cure. And the third reading is about a plague known as the Black Death. In the 1300s, it killed 25 million people in about 5 years. And just in case you thought plagues were a thing of the past, the video story will tell you about a recent epidemic, SARS, and how the world responded to this deadly outbreak. Reading 1. Prepared for smallpox. Once upon a time, this tiny parasite, called the smallpox virus, was a deadlier killer than any war in history. Today, scientists fear that smallpox may someday strike again. Why? In the 1970s, smallpox was almost wiped out because a vaccine, a medicine containing a small amount of a virus, made people resistant to the disease so they couldn't catch it. The vaccine was so successful in wiping out smallpox that doctors quit giving it to patients. But scientists kept containers of the smallpox virus to use in research. And your first reading is a newspaper article that tells what might happen if the virus gets into the wrong hands. Reading 2, A Killer Without a Cure. It's horrifying. It's deadly. And there's no vaccine against it. It's called Ebola. And when this killer virus struck Zaire, a country in Central Africa, scientists and doctors worked around the clock to quarantine, or separate, the healthy from the sick and stop the epidemic from spreading. How can something so small affect so many people? Viruses can pass from one person to another through the air, or through bodily fluids, like saliva and blood. They can even be passed by insects and animals. And while most, like the common cold, are fairly harmless, the Ebola virus is vicious, causing victims to bleed internally, inside their bodies. In this magazine article, you'll discover how medical workers responded when Ebola struck Zaire. Reading 3, The Black Death. Some call it history's worst mass murderer. Known as Black Death, this plague took hold in Sicily, an island that's part of Italy, in 1347 and went on to kill 25 million Europeans in just 5 years. Outbreaks of Black Death, which got its name from the black boils that appeared on victims' bodies, continued to crop up throughout Europe for the next 300 years. How did the plague spread so widely? People fled their homes to escape it and took the disease with them. But towns struck by plague also discovered a means to stop its spread by quarantining or separating the victims from everyone else for 40 days. In your third reading, a science feature, you'll learn more about Black Death and its horrifying effects. In 1918, a deadly strain of flu virus spread around the globe, infecting 1/5 of the world and killing nearly 40 million people. Face masks alone couldn't protect people from this highly contagious disease. Today, we have more effective ways of controlling epidemics. Take a look at what happens when a new killer emerges. A modern epidemic. When a new killer virus called SARS broke out a few years ago, doctors, health agencies, and even law enforcement all worked together to stop it in its tracks. It started in 2003 when a mysterious illness showed up in several countries in Asia and elsewhere. Patients had fevers and coughs. Many had trouble breathing. Doctors quickly notified the World Health Organization, a group that tracks health issues around the world. Soon, the World Health Organization issued a global alert about this new virus called SARS. In the US, the Centers for Disease Control, or CDC, issued a warning advising people to stay away from the affected countries. The CDC is the agency that investigates and gets the word out whenever there's a health threat in the United States. This time, it was on high alert, monitoring the progress of the virus. Within days, SARS hit North America. Several cases showed up in Toronto, Canada, carried by infected passengers on an airplane. Within 3 months, there were at least 140 cases of SARS in Canada. Around the world, health officials moved quickly, trying to contain the spread of the virus. In China, businesses were shut down and 30,000 people were quarantined. Hospitals in Toronto also quarantined patients with SARS, and schools and other public places were closed. In the US, a plane was held in an airport because some passengers were suspected of having SARS. They were removed and rushed to a hospital. By early May, SARS had managed to spread to at least 26 countries, and health officials feared that many thousands would die of the virus. But the aggressive measures paid off. In the end, fewer than 800 people died of SARS, and there were no deaths in the United States. By July 2003, the global outbreak of SARS was declared to be over. Acting together and responding quickly, the world had stopped a deadly killer in its tracks.